What's up, fight fans from all around the world? I am your fight goddess, Chris Baldwin. Welcome back to the War Room, and I am here with my sports justice family, Melissa Smith. She is a women's boxing historian, and my boy, Eddie Goldman. We call him the Conscious of Combat Sports. You guys, I'm just so stoked to be back in the War Room today. It's been a minute because I've been traveling. We couldn't get together, but it's okay. We are here now to discuss this fight coming up on February 4th. I'm so stoked to talk about women's boxing this weekend. I mean, the February 4th weekend. So look, Melissa, this card is stacked. Matchroom Boxing has it going on. Do they not have it going
I am
on?
telling you, until today, until this morning,
It's
there were
crazy.
4 fights, right? It
Right.
was like 2 undisputed bouts on one freaking female boxing card, right? You got Amanda Serrano
Exactly.
fighting Erika Cruz for all the cookies at World Feather. We're talking IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO, all of it, all those belts. Then you got Alycia Baumgardener
That is just
fighting El Mekhaled for all the cookies. Okay.
fire
We're talking
emoji. Fire emoji.
two. Then
Right.
you've got Ramla Ali. And, we've been talking about Ramla Ali. She is the real deal coming out of, an immigrant, a refugee that came from Somalia, living in London. She's really made a splash here. She's a fantastic boxer at 7-0. She is fighting Avril Matthew, who we interviewed here in June ahead of her last fight. They're having an IBF Intercontinental Super Bantamweight bout. So it's for a baby belt, but they get a belt out of it.
Right.
Then you got Sky Nicholson, who, even though she's at 5-0, she's fighting for a WBC silver feather against Tanya Alvarez. This is going to be a super fight. Tanya Alvarez is 7-0. I mean, talking like this is not a case where you just have cannon fodder here. These are fighters that know how to dang fight, and they're fighting each other, best versus the best,
That's
even
right.
at the lower levels. And just today, Shadasio Green, it was announced, has been signed by Jake Paul's MVP Promotions. She is now fighting on this card. She's fighting Ellen Cederroos, who the last time she fought lost her belt to Franchon Cruz at Madison Square Garden. The two of them are fighting for the WBC Silver Super Middle and the right to fight. The winner of this fight gets first dibs on a mandatory against Franchon. So I mean, this is amazing shit, right?
That's
right. Like the real deal
just
here.
Smoke. This is just smoke.
This is serious smoke. Now it's, Amanda Serrano, rightfully so, is the main event. It's at the Hulu Theater. It's not in the main theater. It's at the Hulu Theater. It's going to be just sold out. Every seat. There's no way you're going to find a seat. You're going to have to be in the rafters to watch this fight at this point. And it's really an extraordinary event. It will be next Saturday, February 4th. It'll be broadcast on DAZN. I know it's a streaming service and got to pay for that. But
I may have to renew my membership.
You may have to just renew your thing. You can always cancel after. Just pay by the month and cancel. But I'm telling you, this is worth the price of admission. I am so thrilled that I was able to get my ticket to be able to watch this fight. It's a really exciting opportunity. And I got to tell you, just so far in January, our first big fight in January was Jessica Nari Plata, who fought in Canada against Kim Clavel, who had her own belt. They fought, and Plata just did an amazing job. This was already a potential fight of the year, and it was January 13th. So I'm telling you, women's boxing is on fire right now.
Fire.
Every fight is best versus the best. Such an exciting opportunity. And as I said, February 4th, it's like the gauntlet is being laid down, fight by fight, card by card by card. And this fight is taking place in the United States. Okay, yeah, it's on DAZN, which is not ESPN. It's not Showtime. So once again, it's kind of calling out American media to say, where are you in terms of these opportunities for women, these super fight opportunities? They're kind of losing out, but
Well,
maybe
they're late. They're late as hell on this train right now.
Yeah, right now they're late on this train.
Right.
But they're interested in both profits and promoting certain stories, and they don't basically like women fighting, people running these things. So, and boxing, the people that run boxing, the promoters and networks, are penny wise and pound foolish. For decades, and putting the best fights, and not even some of the best fights, on pay-per-view behind one paywall after another. Now everything on DAZN is behind a paywall, so you'll have fewer people watching this than would be watching a Showtime card, and certainly watching an ESPN card. And from what, according to the press materials put out by Matchroom, this is shown exclusively worldwide on DAZN, which means that in most countries, the viewership for boxing is negligible on DAZN. So you do have people in some European countries subscribe to DAZN to see the local football leagues, but I don't know how many you're going to watch the boxing. Plus, in Europe, this fight will be on Saturday night, so in Europe, it'll be on in the middle of the early wee hours on Sunday morning. So with all these great fights and these zillion and one belts that are going on, why doesn't somebody else pick this up? It's absurd. And the boxing media really isn't helping, because even with the great year that we had in 2022 for women's boxing, how many of these awards went to women's boxing? In fact, a lot of them didn't even have, some had and some didn't have separate categories for men's and women's boxing. If men and women obviously are not going to fight each other, then if you can have fight of the year and all these different awards, you have to have one for men and one for women. It only makes sense to do it that way. Even in baseball, where there's interleague play, when you have most valuable player and the other awards, there's one for the American League and one for the National League. But in boxing, you generally don't have that. Some of the sanctioning bodies do that because they want to get sanctioning fees, But it's basically a structural problem, and you can tinker at the edges on this, but you have a new sport can come along like pickleball and can laugh at that. And pickleball is starting to get better TV deals than boxing in the last few months. And over 4 million people in the United States are playing pickleball, and it's getting, with a chuckle at the name, it's getting a lot of positive media attention. So whatever you might think about pickleball, which I guess has been described as sort of a combination of badminton and tennis and squash, that type of game, sort of thrown together.
It'll be in the Olympics next.
Yes,
boxing will be gone, and there'll be pickleball. My neighbors are all where I live in Brooklyn. It's like they're pickleball crazy.
They are.
It's here too. What the frig is pickleball?
And there's stars emerging, so that's getting more attention than boxing, and particularly women's boxing. So you got to pay. What is the DAZN? $20 a month now to watch the fights,
so
and they're loading up.
Basically, like it's like having to pay a pay-per-view to sign up for a month to be able to watch.
Yeah, but the thing about I love watching boxing on Sundays. That's like one of my things. I get up and I turn on old fights. I watch it on YouTube. But on with DAZN, they have a whole library of fighters. So if I wanted to say, watch Canelo's, all his fights, they're on there, or Joshua or whatever. So to me, that $20,
it gets you more than a pay-per-view, and that's the point.
It's worth
and Eddie, you're absolutely right. But we've talked about this before. Boxing is dead in America. Where the hell is there boxing? There's nothing. There was
local
no boxing.
Shows though. Local shows are
local
thriving.
shows. That's it. And there's
local
good
shows
local shows coming up. And local shows show on local media, and you find them on YouTube. They play them live on YouTube. They play them live on Facebook, and these funny little streaming services that you can grab. And those are popular, and there are always women on those cards. So, on the underground side, on the down low, if you will, boxing is happy.
Right.
But this card, this deserves
absolutely
so much more.
It needs to be elevated.
Much more.
I would say that if you're not going to watch it live, there are plenty of pirate streaming services out there that will show it. But if you're not going to watch it live, you could find between 95% and 100% of mid to level to major fights on YouTube or Daily Motion that are recorded. So if you're not going to watch it live, what's even the point of doing it if you're on a limited budget? And what's more, it means that its business model is flawed, because people, particularly younger people, are internet and tech savvy, and they know how to do these type of things. So it's using a business model from when pre-internet days. And no wonder why the whole thing is floundering.
Well, and also, look, the UFC organizations like that have really kind of rejiggered how people view mixed martial arts, how they develop their stars, who they play for each other, and really have some compelling business models that they have put into play. Not that all of them should be followed, but it's certainly worth looking at in terms of opportunities. Even the opportunities for tournaments, the opportunities to build that kind of chance to get visibility, to learn the game as professionals, to be able to earn a living, at once you reach a certain point. And, like on this card, we don't know what the dollars are. We're assuming that Amanda, the four at the top, or certainly Amanda and Alycia, are being well paid. Not so sure what Erika Cruz and Ellen Michaled are earning. And on the lower end of the scale, they might be doing well. Hard to know what the purse is going to be for the B side on these fights. It's certainly going to be better than the $4,000 that Amanda, would have been earning 10 years ago.
Or $800. Some of those girls used to get like $800 or $900. That shit is crazy.
Yeah. So, there's a little bit more here, and we'll see where this goes. But meanwhile, just as a pure sporting event, it's extraordinary to think of a boxing card. What male boxing card ever had two undisputed bouts on the same card?
I can't even think of one.
Caliber recently. Fighter.
Right.
Yeah, we can discuss another time the thing with UFC, because they exploit their fighters much worse than even boxing does. In boxing, a lot of the boxers, about roughly 50 to 70% of the total monies go to the fighters. In UFC, it's between 15 and 20%.
Well, they're on salary, basically, right?
Well, no, they're not necessarily on salary, but overall, and it may vary with the smaller MMA leagues, but the UFC is the biggest one of these leagues. Plus, the UFC's business model is predicated on aligning itself internationally with fascism and Trump.
Well, that we know. I'm not talking about them per se,
but that's the niche that they've established
their
themselves.
Niche.
Yes, so they're able to get, which is a richer niche, so that's who they get. It's a smaller, richer niche, so they could put their main events on pay-per-view and get away with it because they're paying their fighters so much less and getting a higher income viewership. So it's a very different situation. It's apples and oranges. Even though they're both on pay-per-view. So it's a discussion for another time, but I wouldn't compare anything. I think that would be something that would make boxing even worse if a UFC model were put in place. And they have their own interim champions and a lot of the same crap,
Well, everybody's here to make money, Eddie. So, it's a capitalist society we live in.
Well, and even in the amateurs, they're there to make money.
Right.
The
Everybody wants
organizations,
to
as
make
we've
money.
seen.
Exactly. So look, let me ask you guys, you saw the was that ESP Ringside magazine with this social award that went to Ashton Civil, what's his name, and Ramla Ali.
What is the social award? I had never
don't
heard of
know.
that
That's
before.
what I was like. What is a social award? I don't know what that is. The person who's got the most social media following. I mean, what the hell?
Or maybe
is
it
that?
was the person who was, I don't know, social responsibility, or had, paying it forward into the community. That's the only thing I can think
Ramla
of.
fails in that category because didn't she perform box in Dubai? You can't
Yeah, she did.
You can't accept that award if you're fighting in Dubai. That's how I feel about that. So,
but I don't really know if it has to do with
right.
that or not, or maybe that was the pick of people. That was the people who were most voted for. I don't know.
Who knows?
That could be the other thing. They put it out on had people vote on who should be the prospect of the year. That's the only other thing I can think of.
Right.
Well, I have no idea what it means.
Those two are sharing the prospect of the year title.
And it's not defined by ESPN that I can find. But hard to know.
Whatever. All right, Eddie, what you got going on over there, bro?
A couple of things. I want to continue slamming Ring Magazine.
Oh, Lord.
They gave out their awards for 2022. And Fight of the Year went to Dmitry Bivol, a Russian. And again, there's no mention of Russia's criminal aggression and really genocide at this point against Ukraine, and how many, although the IOC is now softening its stance because they want to have Russians and Belarusians back in the 2024 Olympics under, quote, neutrals, like that'll make any difference. But the boxing, the WBA, he beat Canelo for the WBA belts. That's what he holds. They didn't do anything about Russia. And they're also working with the Kremlev's IBA, whose headquarters basically are in Moscow. Officially, they're in Lausanne, Switzerland, but they're really operating out of Moscow with Kremlev at the head. And they just give him this award and go along with that. And then even worse is the connection to MTK Global. They had their Fight of the Year award went to the Lee Wood Michael Conlon fight. And again, you could debate whether that's Fight of the Year. I haven't watched every fight. I don't see frankly any need to keep up with every fight to judge it. I'll eventually watch that fight because I really liked the Claressa Shields Savannah Marshall fight is the best fight I saw. But again, that's something for debate. But what really got me was that the article, and I don't know, by the way, how they chose their Fight of the Year, if they had a vote among their staff or what. But the article describing it was written by one Paul Gibson. Paul Gibson is a former boxing writer who for almost 4 years was a top executive at MTK Global, the same MTK Global that had to go out of business last year because of its ties to Kinahan. And he was, in fact, had the title of their Chief Strategy Officer at MTK Global from June 2020 to April 2021. And it's unclear whether he was still with MTK Global during the fight between Wood and Conlon, which is on March 12th, 2022. But he was there when it took place in Nottingham, England. And both Wood and Conlon, and this is one of the key points, were, quote, advised by or managed by MTK Global at the time. And it was only later when the U.S. Department of Treasury put out its sanctions on the Kinahan organized crime group, including Daniel Kinahan and his father and his brother and their associates. That was on April 11th, 2022, that MTK Global started to fold, as they started to do some days after that announcement in April 2022. Now, even if Gibson was not formally employed by MTK Global, at the time of the Wood-Conlon fight, there was something very interesting, because just a week after that, Probellum had a card in, again, our favorite country, Dubai, about a week later, that Mauricio Suleiman was at. And among the many people that Suleiman met there were Daniel Kinahan himself, and he wrote a glowing report about he was unfairly discriminated against and all this, and Paul Gibson. So what was Paul Gibson doing in Dubai at the Probellum card, March 18th and 19th, at Kinahan, and all these different people and all these MTK Global people were at? Also, MTK Global listed their headquarters as being in Dubai. So even if he was no longer formally employed with them at the time of the Wood-Conlon fight, he worked for them for at least, admittedly, on his LinkedIn, 3 years and 7 months for MTK Global. Yet when they ran this article by Paul Gibson about the fight of the year, Lee Wood versus Michael Conlon, there's no mention that he ever had any ties with MTK Global and that there could be some kind of conflict of interest. You could argue that, well, he could write the article and include a disclaimer. They didn't even include a disclaimer. So unless you really follow this stuff closely, because it's not like Paul Gibson is, known like, Canelo or Anthony Joshua or somebody like that. You wouldn't know any of this stuff. And you're reading Ring Magazine. It's been around for 100 years, started by Nat Fleischer, and there's all this history. You think there was legitimacy to it. Well, there's not legitimacy to it. It's already owned by Oscar De La Hoya, so it lost whatever little credibility it had when it was sold to a promoter. And now this is what we see being passed off as journalism. And I'll just add one other thing. There was recently a leak from a Swiss hacker found the U.S. no-fly list. And I'm trying to find out what boxers and people from wrestling also are on that list, because we know Tyson Fury has not, and others have not been able to travel to the United States since the Treasury Department put out their sanctions against the Kinahans. So I'd like to find that out, since it was leaked. The hacker got into the database of a small U.S. airline, which didn't protect its database properly, but they haven't published it for the public. So I'm trying to find out. I don't know if I'll ever find out or what, but we know that Tyson Fury, the top heavyweight in the world, cannot travel to the United States. And again, this may be mentioned briefly or tangentially by some of the boxing media, but this is a really big issue. This is something that should be talked about all the time, and it's not. Again, so we see that the boxing media just working in service not only of the promoters and networks, but in these cases in the service of the criminals, in the service of the Kinahans.
Right.
So that's what we have for the boxing media.
It's not getting any better, Eddie. Not getting any better.
I have to, though, give a full disclosure here. I am on Ring Magazine's Women's Rating Committee.
Oh,
and I have to say, we do, people on that committee really give a shit, and we care, and we work really hard to keep it real.
So how does that process work exactly? So how do you select the prospect of the year? Is it
well, that was voted on. That we each did nominations and we voted.
Oh,
so it was
fight of the year too, or just
for women, only women.
Only women.
We did women. We're the Women's Rating Committee. This year we voted fairly. We each put in who we wanted, and whoever got the most won.
Are there men on your committee?
Yes.
Okay.
A lot. It's about there's. And we're represented by people all over the world. Someone from Japan, Argentina, Mexico. I mean, it's a very good group. It's 8 people. And and we work very diligently on a weekly basis. Whenever there's fights, we work very diligently.
Right on.
My point is that there are things that are more important than what actually takes place in the ring. I'll just sort of, again, use a baseball analogy. There are great baseball players like Barry Bonds and Sammy Sosa and Pete Rose and others that don't get into the Baseball Hall of Fame, not because they weren't good enough on the field, but because in the case of Bonds and Sosa, use of illegal drugs, PEDs. In the case of Rose, betting on the game while he was betting on baseball, while he was still managing, which gave a tip-off to the gamblers which games he bet on and which games he didn't bet on, which is a sort of hint of who he thought was going to win a particular game, because he didn't bet on every game. And they're kept out. If it were just on what they did, their statistics, it would be no question about putting those guys in the Hall of Fame. But there were bigger issues. And boxing, and baseball is far from being free of corruption. I mean, you could go on and on with that, but boxing, it's not an issue. You do whatever the hell you want. You want to commit war crimes in Ukraine, doesn't matter. So that's that we have in boxing. And no wonder the whole thing is really going to hell.
Exactly. Well, all we can do is discuss it and work on ways to improve and elevate the fighters that need to be elevated in a very
and be fair and really look at everything that's out there. I mean, that's one of the things that I appreciate about what the work I do on the ratings is that because there's such a wide spread of folks, we're really able to look at fighters from Japan and Korea and Argentina, all over South America. It's not just the usual suspects. It's really being on top of the local club fights, how people are doing, how, where they're rising, where they're not.
Right.
By the way, I would have voted for Fighter of the Year if you're just going to have one Fight of the Year for male and female, just based on what they did in the ring. I would have voted for Claressa Shields.
I
beat Canelo. Canelo went up in weight. It was too much for him. So yeah, he won. He looked good in that fight, but it was close. But I had to give it to Claressa Shields, who's going up and down in weight.
Yeah.
I think she's more of a 68-pound fighter, fighting at 60 and sometimes 54. Yeah. And she unified the belts against Marshall at 60.
And we the ratings committee gave her Fighter of the Year, hands down, for women, in appreciation of that. Other votes were close. Right. Hers didn't. I think the committee ended up voting for Serrano Taylor for Fight of the Year. It was a very close vote, but that was fair.
Right.
So they didn't give but the overall awards that where both men and women were involved, they didn't give women anything.
No, not. I mean, Ring did it separately. But
Fight of the Year was all Taylor Serrano was included in the top 3 for Fight of the Year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So in terms of, that I don't know. I only know the women's side of what we did, the work we did for voting for the best of 2022 for women. That's the only thing that I was involved with. And the consideration where, everyone on the committee had the opportunity to put on whoever they wanted. And we voted.
There you go.
And how many women are on the staff of Ring Magazine?
I really don't know. I have no idea. I don't. Right. Not.
It's on by.
My work is on, being
on the ratings.
My work is on viewing women's boxing.
I'm not asking you to defend it. I'm just saying.
No, I'm not. I just don't know how many women write for Ring. I really don't know, because I don't know that any do, or I don't know who's on the editorial board. I know Diego Murillo through his work on the committee, because he runs it. but I don't really know that there are many women that write for Ring, if any. Because Boxing Writers of America too. There's I vote on that thing too for Fighter of the Year. I'm on that. They reach out to me to vote. And I don't think there are any women in the Boxing Writers Association of America.
Oh my word. Okay.
Or maybe one or two. I really don't know. I know that there are women that vote on the Fighter of the Year for women.
Well, I think if you wrote a book about women's boxing, Melissa, you should be in the Boxing Writers Association.
I don't think so. I think it's a despicable organization.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't know anything about it. I was just saying.
We'll talk about that at another time.
I don't write. What I write doesn't get published in boxing magazines.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I'm a boxing writer, and I actually write really nice stuff about boxing when I get to it.
Exceptionally well. I love your writing.
Yes.
And I'm also, again, full disclosure, I'm on the committee that helps select people for the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And I'm really proud of that work.
Around 2009, they suspended me for a couple of months because Bob Arum and some others didn't like a show that I did talking about pay-per-views and all the alternative about these streaming services that are out there, and they suspended me for the content. And a lot of very prominent writers wrote in saying this is absurd to suspend them for this content. So they ended it a few months later, and I did a show with Charles Farrell where we made a mockery of it, and it was $40 at that time a year to join, and we discussed what could I better do with the $40 than join. And we had a real hoot. Like, we went to Craigslist, and at that time they used to have the personal ads, and we looked through those, and should I spend my $40 here? Which category should I look for? I mean, we just made a whole mockery of the thing. And I haven't even made any type of the opposite of the Groucho Marx line. Any organization that suspends me, I'm not going to rejoin.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just looking at the list, and the only person I've seen is Sue Fox.
Wow.
Who's listed as a member
right.
of BWAA.
Wow.
It's mainly old white dudes. Men.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of that, but all the Dougie's on there, but
all right.
No, I never.
Dougie's an old black dude.
Tried that route. Yeah, he is. He's an old black dude.
All right. Well, look, folks, I think that's all. You guys got anything else you want to cover before we cut out of here today?
No, just, if you can get to New York and get to the Hulu Theater on February 4th, you were in for a treat.
And wear masks and look
real deal. Amanda Serrano is going to face a good fighter. I'm really going to be interested to see how she does in this fight. She left it all in the ring when she fought Katie Taylor last April. She's had a fight since then, which with a champion at a lower weight. And she didn't win. She won. Sorry, she didn't win by knockout. Right. She the fighter she fought took her the distance, Sarah Mahfoud. So that was that was a good fight too, and it was an interesting test for her. So I'm really curious to see how things go with Erika Cruz Hernandez, who has held the WBA fight belt, has really resisted this particular fight for some time, and has had other fighters that she's fought. So it will be a really terrific showdown.
All right. Well, look, Coach, you can. Well, hold on. What's up, Eddie?
Watch the news involving these latest developments with the Kinahans, that it looks like pretty soon in the suit that is against MTK Global, there's going to be discovery. A U.S. judge ruled that they can go ahead and have discovery in the case against MTK Global. Could be happening on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day of all days. So there could be the default judgment, and a lot of information could start, more information could start to come out. That's where they poached fighter Jojo Diaz and boxing promoter Moses Heredia. They're suing Kinahan, and Heredia's lawyer Eric Montalvo has been pursuing this literally to all ends of the earth. And so Kinahan is still being protected somewhere in the Middle East, again, in our favorite Middle Eastern country, Dubai. They protected him for many, many years. And Dubai recently released a couple of top international narco terrorists who were busted in an international raid. And Dubai just released them with no real explanation. They refused extradition requests, and there was a lot of vague stuff that went on. So this is what's still going on in Dubai, where more and more of these fights are taking place, like where Saudi Arabia and Dubai are merging as the new Las Vegas, the new international center of both top-level boxing and organized crime.
That is just
the new Sin City, but Sin City with Sharia law selectively applied.
A dry Sin City. A dry Sin City.
Yeah. Every sin except booze, except if you know where to get it.
Exactly. Well, look, folks, you guys make sure you tune into that Serrano Cruz fight on February 4th. That's a Saturday. You guys can get your tickets at msg.com. You do not want to miss that fight. So look, my beautiful.
And the Baumgardener fight too.
And the Baumgardener fight is on there.
And every other fight on that card.
Yeah,
5 fights, people.
Look, it's fire. It's a
times 5
alarm fire on Matchroom Boxing.
Yeah, Shaded Green. I mean, she's won 11 fights, 10 by KO.
Oh, I can't wait to see her knock whoever she fight now.
She is serious at super middleweight. I'm telling you.
That's right.
That is the real deal.
All right, Eddie, tell the people where they can find you, baby.
On Flugel Street. If you don't know what that is, look up the Abbott and Costello version of the old routine that was from the vaudeville days. I'm still on Twitter. I was using a Post for a while. But again, I got one of these malware warnings from my virus program from Post, and I just can't deal with this crap. It's not enough technical problems as it is. So I'm still on Twitter until something else comes along. We'll see how Spoutable, which is supposed to be coming very soon, or any of these others are. You could find me at NHP News, and also at eddiegoldman.com, and go to my Patreon page and subscribe. That's where I can get to do some independent journalism and get a tiny bit of money coming in at patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. In my latest article, A Small Personal Triumph, talking about how I want to view and use 2023 as a year of recovery after almost 3 years of one medical problem after another. They're still there, but they're slightly improving, and I'm continuing to fight on it. So subscribe on that to patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. So you don't have to rely on these websites that are tied to Kinahan and the networks and the promoters.
That's right. Support independent journalism. Melissa, tell the folks where they can find you, baby.
All right. On Instagram, Twitter, and Post, not so much on Post. I'm at Girl Boxing Now. Yes. My website is girlboxing.org. I write about boxing in my own personal journeys. And my book is A History of Women's Boxing. You can find that on Amazon. And I am at work on a new book. Oh my God.
Yay.
Woo! Tentative title, The Promise of Women's Boxing. It's slow going, but I'm pushing and pushing and pushing. Yeah, and one other thing I didn't even tell y'all. I have a chapter coming out in a new book called The Difference. It's a personal essay on how boxing changed my life in a personal sense. And that'll be out sometime in the spring. I'll get you more information as I hear it. It's a compendium of stories by 8 different writers about experiences that completely changed their lives, and what that looked like. So I'm really excited about that, and more to come once I get more information on pub dates and everything else.
One other thing, if you have Big Ten Network and you want to see some really good American college wrestling, this Friday, number 1, Penn State versus number 2, Iowa. The best against the best. So not a lot of people will watch it, but that'll be something really hot.
Oh, all right. I'm not a big wrestling fan, but you guys who love wrestling, you guys get out there and watch that this weekend. All right. Well, look, folks, I am on post at Fight Goddess. I love posts, glitchy posts, shit posts, better than that Shitbird app. But you guys can find me on Twitter at Angry Afro Radio, on Instagram at Fight Goddess Fitness. You guys, thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Please support independent journalism. Support our folks down here. They're doing hard work. All right. This is Sports Justice Radio. And we will see you next time. Peace, love, and push-ups.